Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Greenland shark. Sometimes referred to as gray sharks, these guys are a large shark that is closely related to the Pacific and southern sleeper sharks. These guys have the longest known lifespan of all vertebrate species at an estimated 250 to 500 years, which is unbelievable. These guys are generalist feeders, which means they consume a wide variety of different foods, but they themselves are actually toxic to eat. Since these guys live in the cold depths of the Arctic and North Atlantic, they're quite isolated from human activity, so they aren't thought of as much of a threat despite their large size. In our number 9 spot today, we have the musk ox. These hoofed mammals are native to the Arctic, and it isn't really hard to tell by their thick coats. These guys are one smelly animal, especially the males of the species who have a strong odor from seasoned rut. These guys are actually more closely related to sheep and goats than to oxen, despite their name, but they are in a genus of their own. The modern musk ox is actually the last member in its line that first evolved in the temperate regions of Asia before adapting to a much colder climate. These guys have long curved horns that are seen on both males and females, and adults of these animals weigh on average about 630 pounds, and they can reach speeds of up to 60 kilometers per hour or 37 miles per hour, which truly is insane. In our number 8 spot today, we have a stoat. Also referred to as a short-tailed weasel or ermine, these guys are actually quite a widespread creature. They have quite a controversial history, especially when it comes to the 19th century, however. At that time, they were introduced into New Zealand in an attempt to control the rabbit populations, but instead, they just had a devastating impact on the native bird populations. They were actually voted to be one of the world's top 100 worst invaders. These guys are small but mighty, and they are absolutely ruthless, as rather than digging their own burrows, they were instead seen just taking over those of the animal that they previously preyed upon. In our number 7 spot today, we have the reindeer botfly. Now, for the strongest contender for grossest creature on this list, we have these horrible little flies. These guys deal with the cold climate by taking refuge in the nose of reindeer, where they also like to lay their eggs. I know, I hate it too. These are actually parasitic to reindeer as they infect their nose area. The adults of these creatures are active over the Arctic summer, and they have the ability to fly quite quickly. While flying quickly, they also have a very strong sense of smell that allows them to easily find reindeer from far distances. In our number 6 spot today, we have the puffin. The Atlantic puffin is the smallest of the 4 puffin species, but they are actually the most numerous species. They are easy to identify because of their distinctive beak, which features a bright orange-red tip and a blue or gray triangle that is closer to their face. White stripes can also be seen during the breeding season. Many people refer to puffins as the clowns of the sea because of their sweet and endearing, but just sort of awkward behavior. These guys tend to spend fall and winter in the open ocean of the northern seas, but in the spring they return to coastal areas for breeding. To do so, they nest in cliff-top colonies and they dig into a burrow where they then lay a single egg. Once the chicks hatch, after about 6 weeks they are fully fledged, and one night they will make their way into the sea, only to swim away from shore where they won't return to land for several years. We have the Arctic bumblebee. Bumblebees haven't necessarily been having an easy time lately in general, but the Arctic bumblebee perhaps has the most difficult task of all of the bees, and that is because of the harsh cold climate that they live in. These guys can be found in the most northern areas of Alaska, Canada, northern Scandinavia, and Russia, and because they live in these cold places, they have to go to greater lengths in order to regulate the temperature of their little fuzzy bodies. Basically, they use their large wing muscles in order to sort of shiver, which then helps them keep warm. Another way they maintain their body heat is by making use of sunlight. In these cold climates, when possible, you will definitely see them doing their busy bee work in the light. In our number 4 spot today, we have a lemming. These cute little guys are a mouse-like rodent that, as adults, are about 150 millimeters in length, with 20 of those being their tail. The population of these creatures has seemed to have quite a drastic fluctuation over the years, which many believe is likely due to changes in the weather seen in the harsh climate they live in. What is really remarkable about this cycle isn't how high the population reaches when it's at its highest point, but rather how scarce the population is during the lows. So much so that it causes experts to worry about possible extinction during these times, even though the cycle is only about 4 years long. During the spring on a high population year, these guys will be seen on lake and sea ice, but they don't really move in an oriented manner. Like, they don't all go north or all go south, they just sort of go wherever they feel, and they're rarely seen in large groups. In our number 3 spot today we have the Dall sheep. These guys are of course a type of sheep, but these ones like to inhabit the subarctic and arctic ranges of Alaska, the Yukon, and the Mackenzie Mountains in the Northwest Territories. These sheep are about 3 feet tall at the shoulder, or just under a meter, and they tend to live to be about 12 to 16 years old. During the winter season, it is said that adults of this species lose about 16% of their body mass, and for the young, they are said to lose as much as 40% depending on the severity of the winter weather. In order for these guys to figure out their social order and dominance rank, they have a few different behaviors, but the most popular one is likely the head-on collision that they have with their horns. These behaviors are mostly seen in the rams, or the males of the species, but sometimes are seen in the ewes or the females as well. In our number 2 spot today we have the rock ptarmigan. These guys are a medium-sized bird that belongs to the grouse family. They're actually the official bird for the territory of Nunavut, and they're the official game bird of Newfoundland and Labrador. Unlike many Arctic inhabiting birds, these guys do not gain a bunch of mass in order to hibernate over the winter season, and this is because of their limited capacity for fat storage. Depending on where exactly these birds are found, their diet differs, and it also changes based on what is seasonally available. Many of the males of this species emit a plethora of, quote, guttural snores and rattles, which are often directed at other males. In our number 1 spot today we have ribbon seals. This seal species is found in the Arctic and subarctic regions of the South Pacific Ocean, and they're quite easy to spot and distinguish due to their gorgeous coloration, which features 2 wide white stripes and 2 white circles against dark fur. These guys are actually the only species in their genus, and while during some seasons these guys are icebound, during the rest of the year they prefer to spend their time in the open water. During their time at sea, there is less known about their habits, as they tend to go quite far from land, but since they almost always come back to land, we have been able to observe them a decent amount. One thing that was quite interesting that I read about these creatures is that if they unfortunately find themselves caught in a kind of net, they will actually fake or play dead.
Number 10. Levidansky's flight. The mystery of how Levidansky's flight ended up lost in the first place isn't really a mystery. In 1937, a Soviet pilot named Sigismund was tasked with being the first pilot to fly a passenger plane over the North Pole. A project that should have taken a full year ended up being rushed into 3 months because they wanted to impress Stalin. Unsurprisingly, right from the start, the right engine was emitting smoke after it took off, which engineers said would stop. Well, it didn't. And 19 hours later, they attempted to make an emergency landing. But where the case gets interesting is that despite Russian, Canadian, and American rescue efforts combing the Arctic, there was not a trace of them to be found. The likeliest answer is that the plane sank into the icy depths, which they searched, but still nothing. A magnetic anomaly was detected at the bottom of a lake, but that was the only evidence ever found. They still didn't find the crash, so wherever they are, may they rest in peace. Number 9. The monster of Lake Liamna. The ocean is not the only place in the world we don't have all the answers to. Loch Ness has Nessie, Alaska has the monster of Lake Liamna. Reportings of a massive creature in the lake have been found from planes flying over it since the 1940s, as well as fishermen have seen some weird things. Traditionally, locals didn't fish in the lake because they thought it was dangerous because of this. There is some speculation that the creature they are seeing are white sturgeonfish, a breed of fish that used to be able to reach about 20 feet long, but nobody's ever found proof. So it could be a Greenland shark or the similar sleeper shark. Sturgeons are typically white and silvery, and many report the monster being black or dark in color. But evidence of neither shark breed have been found in the lake, so what is it? So the monster remains a mystery, sighting after sighting, without anyone getting a close enough look. Number 8. The disappearance of Henry Hudson. The Northwest Passage. Does anybody know that Stan Rogers song? It's a great song. The elusive pathway to the Orient that would lead whoever found it to treasures beyond imagining. It would just be a great trade route. While it currently exists today, many men died trying to find it or disappeared. Thus begins the mystery of Henry Hudson. Hudson was an English explorer who vanished in 1610 while he attempted to find this elusive pathway. Only rumors, theories, and some clues remain of him now. Hudson made several attempts at finding it, and at one time thought he succeeded when he sailed what is now known as the Hudson Strait. His ship, the Discovery, got stuck in the ice, and he promised the crew they'd sail back when it had thawed. But he lied, which blew up into a full mutiny. The mutineers put him, his sons, and some other members of the crew, with warm clothes and some food, which is very nice, into a small boat, and they were never seen from again. Some say they ended up in Danby Bay, some say they died on the island of Spitsbergen, or that they were captured, but still to this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Henry Hudson and his sons. Number 7. The Baffin Island Vikings. Canadian archaeologist Patricia Sutherland led a dig in 2012 in the north of the Arctic Circle on Baffin Island. She and her team found whetstones containing traces of copper alloy, materials that were foreign to the Inuit but were used by Vikings. This dig was prompted by the discovery of 2 strands of cloth in 1999, identical to the yarn Norse women made. This led Sutherland to believe that there was a strong Norse presence in the Arctic and would have been involved with trade. While it is a fact that Vikings actually lived on the east coast for a while, the real mystery surrounds Sutherland. While undergoing her research, she was fired out of nowhere from her post at the Canadian Museum of History. She says it's because they didn't want to fund a project that didn't support British voyages, while the museum was like, no, you harassed people and you suck to work with. That's not cool. What is the truth? Probably the latter. There was an 18-month investigation by an independent third party that determined it as harassment, but still, who do we believe? Who do we believe? Number 6. The Eagle Flight. Equipped with chocolate cake, a hydrogen balloon crafted of the finest varnished silk, and a whole lot of guts, Salomon August André attempted to reach the pole. He was a young Swedish engineer with big ideas for balloon technology in the 1870s. At that time, no expedition had ever succeeded in reaching the North Pole, and Salomon thought hydrogen balloons were the way to go. His balloon, the Ornen, the Eagle, was built in Paris with full financial backing from the Swedish king. By July 1897, André, Knut Franknell, and Nils Strindberg lifted off from Svalbard and were never seen alive again. The crew disappeared until 3 decades later. Geologists and sea hunters found the ruins of their camp. The skull of one of the travelers was entirely bleached white and, quote, lay there smiling dreadfully, unquote. According to the diary, the crew had to land 65 hours later and survived quite well for a while because they had chocolate cake and that's great. But when they attempted to reach Franz Josef Island, they failed and were lost on their return. But what exactly happened to them, we don't know. One of them might be attacked by a polar bear. There's just no way of knowing. They could have starved, probably. That might have happened. Let's move on. Number 5. Zeleny Yar. In 2014, a fantastic yet grim discovery was made in the Siberian Arctic. 34 shallow graves, 11 bodies shattered and crushed, plus 8 mummified bodies were shrouded in copper and wrapped in fur were found. All of them were buried pointing to the Gorny Poli River. With the extravagant burial process this community went to, archaeologists still aren't sure who they were. Who was this lost culture? They do believe that the mummification was an accident brought on by the non-oxidizing copper placed with the bodies. A year later, another set of remains were found in a birch bark cocoon, and inside was a small boy. So many questions swirl about this discovery, but as of yet, there is no clear answer. Research is ongoing though. Number 4. Rain versus snow, aka rain snow? This mystery is boggling scientists, and if they don't solve it, it could have detrimental effects on Arctic wildlife as it already has. It's definitely one of the weirdest things to happen due to climate change. In the northern area, snow slowly turns into rain, but instead of melting the snow, it seeps into the cracks underground. This snow/rainwater seeps through and forms a solid frozen layer of soil, like a thick shield which blocks the vegetation. This is a massive problem for animals like the muskox, as their food source is no longer available. It is due to this phenomenon that 20,000 of them starved to death in 2003 due to rain snow on Banks Island in Canada. They even tried to find food on floating ice but drifted away. I hope this issue gets solved, but based on the lack of change we are making towards hindering global warming, it may never be. Number 3. 3. Mysterious craters. So if you watch the ice melt in your drink, you can sometimes see little holes pop in through the top. So when I came across this so-called mysterious craters popping up in Siberia, I thought it was just melting ice. I'm no scientist, but with global warming, that makes sense. Since the 1960s, the largest one of these craters was discovered and retreats 15 meters every year. But it gets even stranger when on June 28, 2017, locals noticed flames and columns of smoke near the village of Sakaya. The same area, 10 new craters were discovered. There are some pretty wild theories about what they are. Of course some involve aliens. They say the holes are left by UFOs finally emerging from the ice. Or that they're gates to other worlds. I don't know. A more scientific explanation are the methane reserves trapped in the ice exploding. There's still more research to do. Number 2. Inventio Fortunata. The Inventio Fortunata was a travel log that helped many European explorers map the pole. Thing is, no one knows who wrote it. It was allegedly the description of a voyage by a Franciscan priest from Oxford, but it changed hands so many times no one is sure. In 1360 it was presented to the English crown, and then someone lost it. Then a Dutchman named Jacobus Canoyen included information from it, but then his travel book got lost. Luckily his version was quoted, so we have some idea of what the Fortunata actually said about the pole, but we have no idea where the original might be. The influence of this mysterious document lasted all the way up to the 17th century, but it was a huge reason researchers were able to map it in the first place. But who wrote it and where did they go are two questions that remain. And last but not least, the Alaska Triangle. Just sliding into the Arctic Circle, we have the freezer burn version of the Bermuda Triangle. A massive expanse of icy terrain in Alaska where many have gone and few have returned. This 32,000 square mile area has claimed the lives of 16 to 20,000 people since the 1980s alone. From hikes to passenger plane crashes, no one who has disappeared in the Alaska Triangle has ever been recovered. The disappearance of Majority Leader Hale Boggs is the most famous case, as it launched one of the largest rescue operations the US has ever seen. In 1972, he and his plane vanished over the Alaska Triangle, and despite 39 days of searching, the use of 40 military aircrafts and 50 civilian planes, not a trace of him was ever found. No debris, evidence of collision, or remains, nothing. Even before Boggs in the 1950s, 44 passengers and the pilot disappeared, and in the 1990s, a Cessna 340 carrying 4 people also vanished. The Alaska Triangle could very well be the largest mass grave in the world, and who knows if any of the bodies will ever be found.
And we're starting off this list with probably the most famous disastrous Arctic trek, Franklin's Lost Expedition. John Franklin was to lead an expedition to discover the Northwest Passage, a route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans passing through the Arctic Ocean above Canada. There were 2 ships deployed, the HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, with around 129 crew altogether. They left England in 1845, never to return. Both ships ended up getting trapped in the Canadian Arctic. The crew were completely stranded. Franklin died in June of 1847, but some of the crew managed to survive until April of 1848. Some attempted to venture onto land to survive, but none of them ever made it back home. It was later discovered that some of the crew resorted to cannibalism in a desperate attempt to survive. It wasn't until recently that their actual ships were discovered. The Erebus was found in 2014 and the Terror was discovered in 2016. Next up we have the Karluk Expedition. The Karluk Expedition was a polar journey led by Vilhjalmur Stephenson in 1913. Their goal was to explore the Arctic and collect scientific data. The ship Karluk got trapped in ice off the northern coast of Alaska. The crew faced very harsh conditions and struggled to survive. As the ice floe drifted, they were separated from their supplies and the ship eventually sank. Stephenson left to search for help, leaving the crew under the command of Maurice Koenig. Koenig tried to lead the remaining crew members to safety, but disagreements arose amongst the group. Some members decided to strike out on their own, while others stayed with Koenig. Tragically, several members died due to exposure and starvation, and over time, the surviving crew members became divided into 2 different groups. A group led by Koenig managed to reach Wrangel Island, where they were eventually rescued by a ship. Another group, including a scientist, was also rescued separately. However, some crew members were never found and presumed lost at sea. Number 8, the Lady Franklin Bay Expedition. The Lady Franklin Bay Expedition, also known as the Greely Expedition, began in 1881, led by Lieutenant Adolphus Greely. The mission aimed to gather scientific data in the Arctic. The team established a scientific research station at Lady Franklin Bay in northern Canada, but due to supply shortages and harsh weather conditions, the expedition faced serious challenges. In 1883, a supply ship failed to reach them, leaving the group stranded and started getting lower on food, and eventually the crew members began to die from hypothermia and starvation. In an attempt to survive, Greely and his crew embarked on a treacherous journey southward. They faced extreme cold and had to resort to eating their own sled dogs in order to stay alive. Rescue parties were dispatched, but the extreme conditions made rescue very difficult, and only a few members of the original team were able to survive. When they were finally discovered in 1884, they were in a very dire state. And at number 7, we have the Polaris Expedition. In 1871, a crew led by Charles Francis Hall set off on a mission to reach the North Pole. They left from New York on the Polaris, but once they reached Greenland, things started taking a turn for the worst. They were unable to press on due to the harsh winter storms, and tensions amongst the crew only began to escalate. Mainly, the crew started questioning Hall's abilities as a captain, and 2 scientists on board turned on Hall, and coincidentally, Hall fell ill around this time, accusing one of them of poisoning him. He ended up dying soon after. The crew then turned back and began a long, treacherous trip home. Some members of the crew would separate, but despite all odds, many of them were rescued. The body of Charles Francis Hall was left out in the barren, frozen landscape, not to be discovered until many, many years later, in 1968. And it was determined that he had died as a result of a large consumption of arsenic. Next on the list is the Jeannette Expedition. In July of 1879, the USS Jeannette departed from San Francisco with 33 crew on board, led by George W. DeLong, in an attempt to reach the North Pole. But just 2 months into their journey, the vessel got trapped in ice and drifted for nearly 2 years before finally sinking in 1881, just north of the Siberian coast. The crew were now stranded on the ice, but attempted to trek across the frozen tundra with sleds. They also had 2 smaller vessels in tow, which they eventually used to reach the shores of northern Russia. Shockingly, 13 of the 33 men did survive. The other 20 succumbed to the elements and starvation on the journey, including DeLong himself. Number 5, the S.A. Andre Expedition. The Andre's Arctic Balloon Expedition took place in 1897, and it was led by Swedish engineer Solomon August Andre. The goal of the expedition was to traverse the Arctic and reach the North Pole by means of a hydrogen balloon. On July 11th, Andre and his 2 crew members, Nils Steinberg and Knut Frankel, lifted off from the Danes Island in the Arctic Ocean. But because of heavy winds and technical difficulties, the balloon began to drift off course, and they were unable to control their direction and were carried further and further away from their intended destination. And the last known communication from the expedition was on July 13th of that year, when they sent out a distress signal. The fate of the Andre and his crew remained a mystery for over 30 years, until their bodies were discovered in 1930 on White Island. This expedition was doomed to fail. Andre had some experience with air ballooning, but not enough. He'd only taken up the hobby about 5 years prior to this journey, which probably wasn't enough time to lead a trek far into a particularly dangerous frozen wasteland. In at number 4, we have the Brusilov Expedition. The Brusilov Expedition began in August of 1912 and was led by Russian explorer Georgy Brusilov. The aim of the expedition was to explore the uncharted regions of the Arctic and gather scientific data. But the expedition faced a number of problems from the very start. Harsh weather conditions and treacherous ice made progress difficult, and the crew struggled to navigate through the frozen terrain. In fact, they were completely stuck. Their vessel would remain trapped for 2 whole years, drifting far north with the ice. Valerian Albanov, second in command, requested to take a team out on foot to search for help. His 12-man team began their return journey on makeshift sleds and kayaks, and after a grueling 90-day journey, only Albanov and one other crew member were found and rescued. As for Brusilov and the rest of the crew, they were never seen again. It's believed that the ship eventually sank. The Dyatlov Pass incident. The Dyatlov Pass incident occurred in 1959 in the Ural Mountains of Russia, when a group of 9 experienced hikers ventured into the wilderness, where they met an incredibly tragic and very mysterious end. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, set out on their expedition on January 27th, and their journey was expected to take around 16 days to complete. But when no message was received of their arrival at their destination, and days had gone by after they were meant to have returned, their families became concerned and the authorities were contacted. A search party was organized, and on February 26th, the hikers' tent was discovered, abandoned, and ripped open from the inside. The bodies of the hikers were found scattered in the snow, some partially clothed and with signs of severe injuries. These included skull fractures, chest trauma, bruising. 2 of them were missing their eyes. 1 had their tongue missing. With how gruesome and mysterious this incident was, wild theories and speculation have circulated for years. Some theories suggest that the hikers were victims of a nuclear testing accident, some kind of government experiment or cover-up perhaps. Maybe the students came across something they weren't supposed to see, and others have more supernatural ideas, like an encounter with a Yeti or aliens. Next on the list is the Ziegler Polar Expedition. This expedition, led by Anthony Fiala, took place in 1903, the ambitious goal of reaching the North Pole. But the expedition was a complete failure. The team encountered harsh weather with extreme cold temperatures and treacherous terrain covered in thick ice and snow. The crew members were ill-prepared for the harsh Arctic environment and lacked some of the experience necessary for polar exploration, and this lack of expertise made it difficult for them to navigate through this unforgiving tundra and really hindered their progress. On top of that, the limited supplies they brought with them were insufficient for the duration of this trek. As the team continued their journey, they faced setback after setback. Their ship got stuck in ice, and then they were completely stranded for 2 whole years. Surprisingly, this one actually ended as good as it could have, though, with the crew eventually being found by a rescue party led by William S. Champ. But finally, we have Peter Tessman and Paul Knudsen. In 1919, Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen was traversing the northern coast of Russia, along with his partner Peter Tessem and another explorer, Paul Knudsen. Due to Tessman's chronic headaches, he left him to stay behind with Knudsen on Cape Chelyuskin. Their plan was for them to make their way to the nearby town of Dixon, which was just over a month's journey away. But 1920 rolled around and they hadn't arrived yet. A search party was organized by the Norwegian government, but they didn't find anything. And then a Soviet search in 1921 did manage to find a Norwegian sled and a letter from the men stating that they were in good health. In 1922, a Soviet research team discovered the scientific equipment and data that had been left behind with them, and later they found a body wearing a gold watch engraved with Tessem's name within sight of Dixon. It was practically a skeleton at that point, unable to be identified if it weren't for that watch. And the exact cause of death was unclear, but starvation was a possible cause. That and the possibility that he'd seen the lights of the weather station on Dixon Island and began running towards them. And in his weakened state, he possibly slipped and fell, maybe hit his head on a rock, was unable to get up before freezing to death. As for Paul Knudsen, his body was never found.
Starting us off at number 10, we have no penguins. Where did they go? Oh, the humanity. Okay, most people I know love these cute little short-furred waddling birds, and I think as long as you go to one of those poles, you're gonna see some happy feet action. Well, wrong. Penguins actually only live in the southern hemisphere, down near the South Pole. The truth is, even though the north has a similar climate to the south, the land up north is still rather unstable for most wildlife to live on. These little guys may be on the lighter side, but nevertheless you have to visit Antarctica, and not the Arctic to get those sweet penguin views. Also, may I just say, unlike the movie Happy Feet, it is not proven that they can actually dance and sing like they do in the movie. Mostly they just waddle, but that's still cool, right? At number 9, we have dog races. Who let the dogs out? Well, probably some guy in the Arctic. One of the most popular forms of transportation up in the northern hemisphere due to all the snow is dog sledding. What kind of dogs? Well, specifically huskies. Huskies are beautiful, energetic dogs that are usually used to sled across the Arctic terrain with 2 to 13 dogs pulling a sled depending on the size of the load that they are carrying. But these dog sleds are not just for transportation. One of the most popular sports in all of the north is dog sled races. Many of the human and canine athletes live up north all year round training for the famous Iditarod race, which goes from Anchorage to Nome, Alaska. The championships are then held in the North Pole, where Santa hands the winners a cash money prize and throws the dogs a bone. Okay, just kidding. But I will say I have gone dog sledding twice in my life and it is wicked fun. Especially when you have dogs that take off immediately after you dismount your sled. Moving on. At number 8, we have water unicorns, or should I say narwhals. Many people call these magnificent creatures water unicorns, and they are honestly one of the best examples of animals that adapt to their surroundings. These whales can be found in the Arctic waters with these massive unicorn horns on the top of their heads. Now, over the years, their horns have become larger as it helps these animals swim and break through the ice. These awesome creatures can weigh up to 4,200 pounds, as well as can grow up to 17 feet in length. These whales even sometimes have sword fights with their long horns, and it's a wicked cool sight to see and is worth a trip to the Arctic just to see one of these guys. But keep your distance, those things have a rather sharp end. At number 7, we have flipping poles. That's right, while it might not be that often, the North and South poles can flip. The last time was actually about 780,000 years ago. In one of my other videos I did, I talked about this phenomena, and by the sounds of it, we are actually overdue for an altering of the poles. So, what's gonna happen? Well, scientists don't believe much. Sure, it could throw off our compasses and some technology, and the climate change might throw us for a bit of a loop, but nothing catastrophic. That we know of. At number 6, we have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Chris Hemsworth. In the old pulp magazines back in the 1930s and 40s, a character by the name of Doc Savage took the world by storm. Doc was a super heroic action character that many loved to read about during some of those pretty dark times. But interest in the action hero has resurfaced with the possibility of a movie being made. The two main actors in talks of playing the character are Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Chris Hemsworth. This character actually is based in the North Pole and not in a city like other superheroes. So very soon we could be seeing Hollywood North go even further up north. The only last question is, are you Team Rock or Team Thor? Let me know down in the comments. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5, we have a Russian flag. Back in 2007, a group of Russians traveled up to the North Pole and dove down to the bottom of the deep Arctic Sea and planted a flag. Well, okay, kinda. A robot did because it's way too freaking cold for human beings to swim down there. But no, sorry Russia, it doesn't mean that you own the North Pole now because that's still Santa's, duh. But it does mean that you were the first to leave your mark, so great, good for you. The USS Nautilus did float over the spot back in 1959, but they didn't have high-tech robots at the time to brag about their travels, so sorry US, it's okay, you guys have the moon anyway. At number 4, we have Float Central. Beneath all that crystal-like ice and large ice masses is just Arctic water. Basically everything you see up there are just large ice land masses, also known as glaciers, just floating around. So all the wildlife and people that are found up there are actually just floating around on pieces of ice. Cool, right? Well, not really when things keep melting, so let's try and work on that global warming thing again, huh? Or else, you float too! Starting us off in our top 3, at number 3, we have a no time zone. Do we share time? Are we all just lost in time? Is time one continuous timeline, or is it a constant never-ending loop? Who the hell freaking knows? Well, one thing we do know for sure is that the North Pole actually has no exact time zone. It's timeless! So what's that mean? Well, it just means that you won't really know what time zone to go by once you're up on the North Pole, but that's okay. If you're hanging with Santa Claus, he's a world traveler anyway, and I'm sure he can just take you to wherever the hell you want to go. At number 2, we have a classic first the worst, second the best situation. Who discovered the North Pole first? Well, that's a bit of a tough question depending on who you ask. Robert E. Peary, a famous dog sled racer, apparently was the first to sled on the terrestrial North Pole back in 1909. But Frederick Albert Cook also says that he discovered the same area of land back in 1908, but he just didn't document it. So who is the real founder here? This might be a real case of finders keepers, losers weepers, but you know, if Cook is telling the truth, then it is all his, but there's no way to know for sure. So next time you're all out there discovering new lands and territories, don't forget to save a few pics and boomerangs for the gram, huh? And finally, coming in at our #1 spot, we have the infamous man himself, Santa! That's right. Remember in my first video when I said that Santa was real and anyone who didn't agree with me could fight me? Yeah, that's right. I mean it. Step up, chumps. I actually have proof. Every single year around Christmas time, December 21st to be specific, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, actually tracks the Jolly Man himself. And you can check online for updates to see where Santa is flying over and what he is doing to get ready for his big night. So, boom! Proof that Santa is real and there's not a freaking thing you can do about it except weep your sweet little eyes out on Christmas morning when you non-believers get a stocking full of coal. Ha, chumps.
Coming in at number 10 is giant craters. First discovered in Siberia around the 1960s, these giant sinkholes are recorded to measure as much as 160 feet deep and seem to keep expanding year after year. Upon discovery, scientists immediately suspected the cause of these giant, strange holes to be rooted in climate change, and as it turns out, that theory was totally right. Basically, there's this thing called permafrost, which is a thick layer of soil that remains completely frozen, or rather should remain frozen. With rising temperatures, the permafrost is thawing, and as it does, large pockets of methane gas accumulate beneath it. These pockets of gas eventually erupt, sending ice and soil rocketing through the air and leaving behind a giant hole in the ground. But if you ask some conspiracy theorists, they have a different story. Some believe that these craters are the former landing grounds for UFOs that have since left the Earth, and many even believe that the craters are actually a gateway to another world. Coming in at number 9 is a mystery noise. Now, this is somewhat a conspiracy, but according to local northern Canadian hunters, a strange pinging noise was heard coming from the Arctic seafloor. Well, enough residents heard this noise and reported it that the Canadian military actually came to investigate it further. But from there, it seems to have become a dead end. The military aircraft failed to find anything hidden in the water and detected no noise at all, despite the locals swearing by the phenomenon. But what was that noise that they all heard, and where did it go? Well, if you ask conspiracy theorists, they believe it was Russian submarines spying on them, while others have just chalked it up to the movement of ice sheets, which apparently are known to make some bizarre noises from time to time. But craziest of all, according to a few terrified citizens, they think it's the sound of an ancient demon awakening to destroy all humans for good. Next up at number 8 is microplastics. Okay, so while this might not be the typical definition of horrifying, our planet being slowly destroyed seems pretty horrifying to me. It turns out that fast fashion is hurting more than just our landfills. These cheap materials that make up so much of today's clothing is making its way into the most remote oceans in the world. Microplastics are these tiny fibers, no bigger than a few millimeters, but are the cause of a massive environmental worry. Apparently, when you do your laundry, the microplastics from your clothing shed and turn up in grey waters. From there, the water travels to a treatment facility where luckily 95% of these dangerous fibers are trapped, but some inevitably escape. With all the people around the world doing what is pretty much non-stop laundry, billions upon billions of these microplastics are ending up in the Arctic Ocean, and they pose a huge risk to creatures inhabiting the water, like already endangered polar bears, as well as whales, seals, and other critters. Now, of course, it's not like you can just stop cleaning your clothes. I guess that's what makes this one so concerning. Realistically, the only way to stop the rise of microplastics is for manufacturers to cut back on man-made materials that shed these dangerous fibers. Coming in at number 7 is an ancient virus. It's not every day you think that you're gonna find a prehistoric virus buried 100 feet deep in the Arctic permafrost. But back in 2014, in the depths of icy Siberia, 2 researchers did exactly that. The ancient virus,
named Pathovirus, is believed to date back 30,000 years and has remained completely untouched in its hibernation, but still completely active and capable of infecting amoeba. According to people much smarter than me, it's apparently a giant virus containing 500 genes, which is insane considering that HIV only contains 12. But don't start panicking just yet. Luckily, experts believe it's very difficult to actually become infected by this virus as a human, although technically it wouldn't be impossible. Next up at number 6 is an ancient Siberian civilization. The Arctic Circle in its entirety includes lots of countries like Norway, Greenland, even our home and native land, Canada. But the further north you go, the less popular it tends to be due to the incredibly cold temperatures. But after recent discoveries between the years of 2013 to 2017, it seems as though once upon a time, a medieval civilization dating back to somewhere between the 12th and 13th century was found and cultivated an entire community near the town of Salakard in the Siberian Arctic. To date, archaeologists uncovered a total of 47 burials, including many mummified bodies kept in pristine condition due to the permafrost. Despite some of the mummies being found with shattered bones and crushed skulls, the internal organs were still well preserved. Of all the mummies found, there was only one female, leading experts to believe she must have been from high class or something like that to be mummified among all the men of the time. Coming in at number 5 is the flight of the eagle. Way back in 1897, even less was known about this great icy circle, and a Swedish explorer by the name of Solomon August Andre decided that he was going to be the man to reach the North Pole. With the help of 2 of his friends, he planned to complete the mission via a hydrogen balloon, starting in Svalbard and finishing in either Russia or Canada, planning to pass right over the North Pole on the way. Fast forward 30 years, a group of geologists, as luck would have it, landed on the uninhabited island and happened upon ruins of a camp. They discover a journal left by the expedition team detailing the horrors of this trip. The geologists found out that their balloon began rapidly leaking hydrogen just 2 days after it began, and they crashed into the ice, halting the journey 500 kilometers from their initial start point. Now, without their method of transportation, they were forced to make their way back on foot in an attempt to survive the harsh winters of the Arctic. Although they survived an initial 3 months, unfortunately they were no match for the brutal conditions. When the camp was discovered years later, all 3 bodies were taken back to Sweden to be cremated, thus solving the mystery of the disappearance all those years ago. Next up at number 4, viral epidemics. Back in 2016, due to the rising temperatures in the Arctic, the ground was beginning to thaw, and although initially no one really thought much of this, what ended up happening was an anthrax outbreak that actually killed 1 person and hospitalized 72. The cause? Well, apparently the local groundwater became contaminated by thawing deer cadavers who had once died from this infection. The horrifying part of this is actually the precedent it sets for the future. Because of the cold temperatures in the Arctic, many viruses can actually stay preserved in the bloodstream, as was discovered in 1918 when 6 young men who died from the Spanish flu were found with their active virus still in their blood. As the earth heats, there's worry that buried bodies from deadly diseases like smallpox could begin to infect the living if the temperatures continue to rise, melting the frozen graves. Next up at number 3 is a secret German base. In October of 2016, Russian scientists uncovered something truly shocking. It turns out back in World War II, he who shall not be named and his band of military followers built a secret military base in the depths of the Arctic soon after their invasion of Russia. Located on Alexandra Land, it is not known for sure exactly what the purpose of this bunker was. Some believe it was to learn about and become acquainted with the harsh weather conditions to be able to better attack when the time came, though some believe the leader sought out ancient relics he believed would give him great power. Upon its 2016 discovery, 500 different artifacts were found, including old weapons and documents pertaining to World War II. As with just about all Arctic discoveries, the artifacts remained in excellent condition due to the extremely low temperatures, but that doesn't make this super secret war bunker any less creepy. Coming in in at number 2, the HMS Terror. You may or may not have heard of Sir John Franklin, the 19th century naval commander who set out to find the Northwest Passage. Well, unlike some of the other explorers of his time, he was actually incredibly prepared. The famous HMS Terror ship was a converted bomb vessel that had survived the War of 1812, and upon his Arctic expedition, the ship was reinforced with iron plating to crush the thick layers of Arctic ice. Stocked with 3 years worth of food, Sir Franklin and his 134 crew members boarded 2 ships and set sail. But despite their best efforts, they were no match for the harsh conditions ahead. The ship was lost to the Arctic and its whereabouts remained a complete mystery. That was until August of 2016, when members of Arctic Research Foundation on their own expedition found the ship preserved under the ice. The horrifying part comes when historians were able to piece together what their last days on the vessel could have looked like. Assumed to have been trapped by the ice for over a year and a half, the crew was dropping right, left, and center, including their captain Franklin. So the remaining survivors decided to abandon the ship and take their chances on foot, planning to reach a remote fur trading outpost hundreds of miles away. With no food, no water, and no resources left, the crew was left with but one thing to keep them alive: each other's flesh. Now, there were no survivors, but many bodies remained mummified from the permafrost, allowing historians to learn about what really happened on the infamous HMS Terror. And coming in last up at number 1, no more Arctic? Okay, so while this one hasn't necessarily been recovered by a group of researchers or scientists exploring the Arctic, it is certainly a huge concern amongst researchers. The rate climate change is affecting the world, as we know, is cause for concern, and scientists are trying to foresee what might happen. According to a study from 2011, there is concern that all of the Arctic sea ice could be gone by the year 2060 due to the rise in greenhouse gases on the planet. Not only that, if you look at many of the animals native to the Arctic, polar bears, Arctic fox, walrus, narwhals, beluga whales, they're all declining in population at massive rates and risking extinction because their environment and food sources are being destroyed by either humans directly or climate change, which is pretty much also caused by humans. So while this might be more of a cautionary tale, it's certainly not a myth. It's obvious that the world around us is in need of our help, and without change, it's very likely we're gonna face some dire consequences.
Scientists discover a new species lurking in the depths, lives in waters 200 to 3,000 feet deep.
One of the world's biggest icebergs is stuck.
Glacier experts are buzzing.
The Arctic Ocean is hiding secrets that could shake everything we think we know about our planet. From massive, mysterious creatures lurking in the depths to unexplained lights dancing beneath the ice, scientists are uncovering sea anomalies that spark fear and fascination. What is causing these strange phenomena? Are we on the brink of discovering something extraordinary or something terrifying? Starting off today in our number 10 spot, we have the magnetic anomalies. Navigators venturing into certain parts of the Arctic Ocean have reported their compasses going haywire, pointing in unexpected directions and making navigation a very tricky affair. These strange magnetic anomalies aren't just throwing off explorers, they're stirring up concern among scientists studying Earth's magnetic field. The magnetic North Pole has been drifting faster in recent years, and these Arctic oddities might be hints of deeper changes happening within our planet's core. This shift could have ripple effects on everything from navigation systems to the migratory patterns of animals that rely on Earth's magnetic cues. As researchers investigate these mysterious disturbances, they're very keen to uncover what's causing the magnetic mayhem and what it could mean for our technologically dependent world. Could these anomalies be early signs of significant changes in Earth's magnetic behavior? In our number 9 spot today, we have the hidden civilizations. Deep beneath the Arctic's icy veil, tales are emerging of ancient cities entombed in the frozen depths, sparking both excitement and fear among those who hear them. Explorers have reported glimpses of geometric shapes and structures beneath thinning ice sheets, formations that look eerily artificial. Some scientists on remote expeditions have picked up anomalous readings on their equipment, suggesting massive, unexplained objects lying on the ocean floor. Adding to the mystery, a few fishermen have hauled up peculiar artifacts in their nets, intricately carved stones and metallic devices etched with symbols that don't match any known language. While official explanations chalk these up to natural phenomena or modern debris, whispers grow louder that we might be uncovering the remnants of a civilization lost to time. As the Arctic ice continues to recede, one can't help but wonder, are we on the brink of rewriting history with discoveries hidden beneath the polar ice? In our number 8 spot today, we have the disappearances. Throughout history, the Arctic Ocean has swallowed entire expeditions without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of their mysterious fates. The Franklin expedition of the 19th century is perhaps the most haunting. 2 ships and 129 men vanished into the icy abyss, sparking countless theories but offering few answers. Recent findings of their eerily preserved ships beneath the frozen waters have raised more questions than they solve. Some artifacts hint at sudden madness among the crew, while local legends speak of malevolent forces guarding the polar realms. Modern explorers retracing their routes report unsettling phenomena, compasses spinning wildly, unearthly sounds echoing through the mist, and fleeting shadows beneath the ice that defy explanation. As scientists delve deeper into these anomalies, they're beginning to fear that the Arctic hides more than just harsh weather. It may conceal secrets that challenge our understanding of nature itself. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Polluted. The Arctic Ocean is throwing scientists for a loop with the sudden appearance of massive polluted, huge patches of open water that inexplicably emerge in the midst of solid sea ice. These anomalies aren't just small gaps, some are large enough to be spotted by satellites, leaving experts scratching their heads. Marine life seems equally perplexed, with whales and seals venturing into these unexpected open waters while predators follow close behind, disrupting the natural order of the ecosystem. Some researchers speculate that hidden geothermal activity or shifting ocean currents might be tearing these holes into the ice, but no one really knows for sure. The rapid formation of these polluted is altering local climates, affecting everything from weather patterns to the migration of species. As the mysteries deepen, scientists are growing increasingly concerned. Could these startling events be signaling even more dramatic changes lurking beneath the Arctic's frozen surface? In our number 6 spot today, we have the frozen methane pingos. The Arctic Ocean is revealing yet another chilling secret. Enormous underwater mounds called frozen methane pingos that could be ticking time bombs beneath the ice. These mysterious hills, some towering as high as skyscrapers, are filled with pressurized methane gas trapped for millennia. Recent dives have shown these pingos bulging ominously, with cracks spiderwebbing across their surfaces and strange bubbles rising to the frigid surface waters. Scientists are alarmed because if one of these giants were to rupture, it could unleash a massive surge of methane, a greenhouse gas far more potent than carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere, potentially accelerating climate change overnight. Even more unsettling is the possibility of abrupt environmental shifts. Imagine entire ecosystems thrown into chaos by sudden temperature spikes or massive underwater landslides triggering tsunamis. Researchers are racing against time to understand these hidden behemoths before they decide to awaken. Could these frozen giants hold the key to a climatic domino effect no one is prepared for? In our number 5 spot today, we have the watermelon snow algae. Scientists are growing increasingly uneasy about a bizarre phenomenon that's turning the Arctic's once pristine ice sheets a haunting shade of red. Known colloquially as watermelon snow, this eerie coloration is caused by massive blooms of rare algae species. But it's not just the unsettling hue that's causing alarm. These crimson algae absorb more sunlight, dramatically accelerating the melting of the ice and disrupting the delicate balance of the Arctic ecosystem. What's more is that recent expeditions have reported that the areas affected seem to be expanding at an unnatural rate, with some researchers whispering about unknown factors fueling this explosive growth. Wildlife is acting strangely too. Polar bears avoiding their usual hunting grounds and migratory birds altering their flight paths to steer clear of the scarlet-stained ice. As the Arctic continues to bleed red, scientists fear we're witnessing the beginning of an environmental shift with consequences that we can't yet fully grasp. In our number 4 spot today, we are talking about the giant deep-sea creatures. Beneath the icy surface of the Arctic Ocean, rumors are swirling about colossal sea creatures that defy all scientific understanding, sending chills through the marine biology community. Local fishermen whisper about nets shredded by unseen giants and shadows that blot out the sunlight beneath their boats. Deep-sea explorers have reported anomalous readings, massive moving objects that vanish without a trace when approached. Some submersibles have even captured fleeting images of tentacles stretching into the darkness or enormous fins slicing through the frigid waters. Scientists fear these could be prehistoric behemoths awakened from eons of slumber by shifting climates and melting ice. The idea that such leviathans might be real is both exhilarating and absolutely terrifying, hinting at undiscovered links in the ocean's food chain. As research teams prepare to dive deeper than ever before, a daunting question hangs in the air. Are we ready to confront the monstrous mysteries that the thawing Arctic is beginning to unveil? In our number 3 spot today, we have the secret military installations. Rumors are swirling that the Arctic Ocean is concealing more than just ice and wildlife. Some believe it's home to secret military installations hidden beneath the frigid waters. Locals and explorers have reported unusual sightings, strange metallic structures peeking through the ice, unmarked vessels slipping silently through foggy nights, and mysterious transmissions interrupting radio signals. Even satellite images seem to blur or distort certain areas, fueling speculation that governments are masking something big. Scientists on research missions have stumbled upon restricted zones patrolled by unidentified personnel, and their equipment sometimes malfunctions without explanation. The strategic importance of the Arctic, with its untapped resources and new shipping lanes opening due to melting ice, makes these whispers even more intriguing. Could nations be quietly building underwater bases or testing advanced technologies away from prying eyes? The idea might sound like something out of a spy novel, but with so much at stake in this remote frontier, it's a question that keeps getting harder and harder to dismiss. In our number 2 spot today, we have the unusual light phenomena. Under the Arctic night sky, explorers and scientists are witnessing a mesmerizing yet unnerving spectacle of unexplained lights dancing across the horizon. These unusual light phenomena, often dubbed Arctic UFOs, flicker and swirl in patterns that defy natural explanations. While some attribute them to rare atmospheric conditions, shimmering auroras, or optical illusions created by ice crystals, others whisper about more mysterious origins. Reports describe lights moving in synchronized formations, changing colors with eerie precision, and sometimes hovering motionlessly before vanishing without a trace. Cameras and sensors occasionally capture these elusive displays, sparking intense debates among experts. Theories range from secret military experiments using advanced technologies to hints of extraterrestrial visitors observing our planet from the frozen depths. Locals share stories passed down through generations of strange lights guiding ships or signaling hidden dangers beneath the ice. As the Arctic continues to thaw and open up, these lights grow more frequent, leaving scientists both fascinated and fearful of what secrets the darkness might reveal. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Hollow Earth. Whispers of a hidden world beneath the Arctic ice have reignited one of the oldest and most tantalizing conspiracy theories: the existence of a hollow Earth. Adventurers and fringe theorists claim that massive entrances to this subterranean realm lie concealed at the poles, guarded by ancient forces or advanced technologies. Recent expeditions have stumbled upon inexplicable geological formations and vast unexplored caverns that some believe could be gateways to this mysterious inner world. Stories of eerie lights emanating from beneath the ice, coupled with unexplained seismic activity, only add fuel to this speculation. Locals share legends of secret passages and lost civilizations thriving in the darkness below, untouched by time. While mainstream science dismisses these claims as fanciful myths, the allure of discovering a hidden civilization or untapped resources keeps the mystery alive. As ice caps continue to melt and new areas become accessible, the possibility of uncovering something extraordinary captivates the imagination. Could there truly be an undiscovered world waiting beneath the frozen surface, or is this just another captivating chapter in the Arctic's long history of mysterious secrets?
The Arctic Circle is harsh, vast, and conceals a lot of disturbing things under its layers and layers of permafrost. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the creepiest stuff scientists have come across in this part of the world. We're starting things off with the case of the ping. So reports of strange sounds, often described as whistles, hums, or pings, have been documented in the Arctic, and one of the most famous cases involving a strange sound is the Arctic ping. Back in the summer of 2016, in a small Inuit hamlet called Igloolik in Nunavut, hunters started getting concerned about a strange ping noise coming from the Fury and Hecla Strait, which is a channel of water about 75 miles northwest of Igloolik. Now, the hunters' primary concern wasn't just how bizarre the sound was and the fact that they couldn't identify it, but the fact that it seemed to be scaring away the sea mammals in the area that they depend on. The sound seemed to be coming from the sea floor, and this wasn't just a few residents reporting the sound either. This was a big enough deal that the military was actually sent in to investigate, but they didn't find anything. One theory is that members of Greenpeace were somehow involved, creating the sound in order to scare off the animals from the hunters, but there's never been any definitive proof of that hypothesis. Next up, we have the Arctic UAPs. So just like with any remote area, the Arctic has its fair share of reported UFO sightings, and now some of these can be attributed to military activity or just misidentification of natural things, but some are still very much unexplained, and one of the biggest stories to come out recently is back in February of 2023 when all those UAPs were shot down over a bunch of different airspaces, mostly in Canada and the United States. News Nation just recently followed up on this story, saying that there were various sources claiming that there was a previously undisclosed encounter, 8 or 9 other UAPs, and this was right over the Arctic Circle. This was on February 1st, just a few days before the main objects had been shot down. Fighter jets were sent up from NORAD to engage with the objects, but the UAPs flew off at high speed, and no, they still aren't sure what these things were, unless they're just hiding that info from the public. Either way, it's pretty eerie stuff. Next up on the list, we have a very alarming discovery of viruses. Scientists have come across viruses like the Mola virus, for example, in the permafrost of the Arctic Circle. Permafrost is permanently frozen soil, and as it thaws, it exposes ancient layers, some of which contain ancient viruses. Mola virus is a type of giant virus, and the fact that viruses can linger deep within the ice, lying dormant for thousands of years and then unleash themselves on the world when they're thawed out, is a pretty freaky idea. Luckily, there haven't been any discovered so far that pose a serious threat to humans, but that doesn't mean that more potentially deadly ancient viruses won't rear their ugly head and become active as more permafrost starts to thaw. Who knows what could be locked away under there. If you are enjoying our channel so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts and comments down in the comments below. So speaking of these dormant viruses breaking free from melting Arctic ice, we have the very creepy case of the Siberian anthrax outbreak in 2016. And so unlike the dormant ancient viruses that I talked about before, this actually did affect human beings. Apparently this was caused by a heat wave, thawed a 75-year-old reindeer carcass that had been infected with anthrax. The thawing process released dormant spores of the bacteria responsible for anthrax into the surrounding environment. The spores contaminated the soil and water sources nearby, and then local reindeer that were grazing on the contaminated land, of course, came into contact with these anthrax spores. Over 2,300 reindeer were infected. This then led to humans getting infected when they consumed the contaminated reindeer meat. About 100 people were hospitalized with anthrax exposure. One person even lost their life. So yeah, this was pretty freaky. Could have been much worse, but freaky nonetheless. Anthrax really is no joke. Just goes to show like how insidious dormant bacteria really is. So Greenland sharks are one of the largest shark species. They can grow to lengths of 24 feet, sometimes more. That's a big shark. You don't need me to tell you why that's scary. Now, here's something that I could not believe about these things. Greenland sharks have a very long lifespan. And when I say long, I mean like long. Again, I read this and was shocked. They live between 250 to 500 years. 500! That means there could be a Greenland shark swimming around up in the North Pole. Right now, it's been alive since the 16th century, just a handful of years after the Middle Ages. Blows my mind. These sharks have a bit of a creepy look to them as well, with a thick, robust body, a rounded snout, dark gray or black in color. Their eyes also have this pale, almost zombie kind of look to them. These are apex predators, their diet consisting of fish, seals, and other marine animals, and they live deep under the water at depths of around 650 to 3,000 feet, and they've been recorded even deeper than that. Next on the list is radioactive fallout. So in the 50s and 60s, a lot of nuclear testing took place, and this released a lot of radioactive material into the atmosphere. These tests, which were conducted both above and below ground, led to the dispersal of radioactive particles over long distances, and the Arctic region, even though it was far away from the primary testing sites, ended up accumulating a lot of this fallout, which was transported there through precipitation patterns before finally settling in the ice and snow. The fallout included Cesium-137 and Strontium-90, which stay radioactive for long periods of time, and they contaminated soil, water, and wildlife. And just like with those pesky viruses, as Arctic ice melts, there are concerns about these radioactive particles getting re-released, redistributing the fallout, and affecting local populations and wildlife. Negatively, of course. You know what's creepy? Corpses. Dead stuff. It's just icky. Ever thought of that? Yeah, this is very enlightening information I'm sharing with you right now. Well, even creepier are old but very well preserved corpses. Mummies. Well, the Arctic ice is a perfect environment for keeping corpses nice and cool, and that's why mummies are found in this part of the world all the time. In one case, in Greenland, the Arctic environment preserved all these mummified bodies, which dated back between 1475 and 1635. These human remains were found in burial sites, and the cold, dry conditions of the Arctic led to the natural mummification process. There have also been several remains of the crew of the doomed Franklin expedition dug up over the years. They look pretty freaky. I mean, if zombies actually started rising up from their graves, they'd basically look like these mummies, depending when they died, anyway. Next, we have the discovery of crashed planes from World War II. There have been a number of World War II planes found buried under Arctic ice over the years. Take one case in 1992, for example. During World War II, a P-38 Lightning fighter aircraft and two B-17 Flying Fortress bombers were part of the Lost Squadron, which encountered a blizzard while supporting the Allied war effort in the British Isles. Because of severe weather conditions, the aircraft were forced to make an emergency landing on the glaciers of Greenland in 1942. All the crew members did survive the emergency landing, but they had to endure very harsh conditions on the ice for 9 whole days before finally being rescued. The aircrafts, though, were left behind on the glacier. Over the following decades, the shifting ice sheets of Greenland gradually buried the planes under about 250 to 300 feet of ice. But then in 1992, one of the P-38 Lightning fighters was successfully extracted from the ice. This aircraft became known as Glacier Girl, and remarkably, despite being encased in ice for like half a century, the P-38 was actually restored to flying condition. Next on the list are Arctic sea ice circles. NASA scientists, during the Operation Icebridge mission over the Beaufort Sea in the Arctic, observed 3 holes in the sea ice surrounded by irregular circular shapes. It's still not entirely known what causes these circles, but some possibilities are seals or whales creating the holes, allowing water to flow out and from the circular shapes, or warm water bubbling up from below. These strange holes appear in an area of young, thin ice that was recently open water, with wave-like ripples on its surface. Arctic sea ice is composed of both multi-year and seasonal ice and has been diminishing and thinning over the years, particularly, as you can imagine, in the summer. The Arctic seems to be warming at twice the global average rate. Some scientists are predicting that the Arctic could be almost ice-free in the summer by the 2040s. Finally though, we have the release of methane. We talked about ancient viruses thawing out of the permafrost earlier in the video, but that's not the only concerning thing concealed deep within the layers of Arctic ice. So the Arctic region has vast amounts of permafrost, permanently frozen soil, and permafrost is thawing, so I guess it's not permanently frozen then, which is exposing organic matter that's been frozen for thousands of years, like dead plants and animals, like the eerily well-preserved Yucca mammoth found in Siberia back in 2010, for example. And when permafrost thaws, the previously frozen organic matter becomes available to bacteria, which then break it down, releasing methane. Is also released from the seafloor in some Arctic areas through seeps. These seeps can be natural, but things like oil drilling can also release methane, and a lot of scientists are concerned about this because excessive amounts of methane ain't great for the environment.
From ancient pathogens waking up from centuries of slumber to massive craters spewing potent greenhouse gases, these chilling discoveries are sending shockwaves through the scientific community. Dive into the heart of the frozen frontier and uncover the hidden dangers that scientists fear could reshape our world forever. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the mercury reservoirs. The Arctic isn't just melting, it's unlocking vast stores of hidden toxins, and some of the most unsettling surprises involve mercury lurking beneath the ice. Scientists have found that permafrost in the far north holds staggering amounts of this dangerous metal, nearly twice as much as what's already present in all other soils, the oceans, and the atmosphere combined. As global warming softens what was once permanently frozen ground, mercury begins seeping into rivers, flowing freely toward the Arctic Ocean, and slipping silently into the food web. Local communities who have lived off these waters and marine mammals for generations may be forced to reckon with contaminated meals that carry serious health risks. In our number 9 spot today, we have the methane craters in the Russian Arctic. Giant craters, wide enough to swallow a building, are ripping open across the Russian Arctic, and their sudden appearance is rattling scientists to the core. In places like the remote Yamal Peninsula, these eerie holes aren't created by meteors or bombs, but by colossal bursts of methane gas erupting from beneath the thawing permafrost. These explosive events are more than just freak geological fireworks, they're a glaring signal that the once solid Arctic floor is destabilizing at a troubling pace. As the permafrost melts, ancient methane, an incredibly potent greenhouse gas, escapes into the atmosphere, accelerating climate change right before our eyes. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Mount Erebus disaster. No one expected a sightseeing trip over Antarctica to end in one of the darkest chapters of aviation history, but that's exactly what happened when Air New Zealand Flight 901 slammed into Mount Erebus in 1979. The plane, carrying 237 passengers and 20 crew, was supposed to glide over the ice and return home the same evening, but a small, late-night tweak to its flight coordinates meant the pilots were steering straight into a deadly deadly trap. They thought that they were flying safely over McMurdo Sound, but thanks to a critical navigational change that no one bothered to mention, the aircraft was actually aimed right at the slopes of Mount Erebus. The aftermath was an outpouring of grief and confusion that rattled New Zealand to its core. The ensuing investigation revealed not just pilot error, initially blamed for the disaster, but a web of miscommunication and buried truths that led to a royal commission. In an unforgettable line, the judge accused Air New Zealand of offering up, quote, an orchestrated litany of lies, a phrase that left the airline's reputation in shambles and forced top-level changes. Even decades later, the Mount Erebus disaster stands as a haunting reminder that sometimes the deadliest discoveries are the ones hidden right under our noses, waiting for one wrong move. In 2016, the remote Yamal Peninsula in Russia became the chilling backdrop for a nightmare no one saw coming. As the Arctic warmed, a patch of thawing permafrost revealed the decaying body of a reindeer that had died from anthrax decades earlier. What seemed like a natural thaw quickly turned deadly when dormant anthrax spores sprang back to life, unleashing a silent killer into the community. Local residents were blindsided as the ancient bacteria spread swiftly, tragically claiming a life and making several others seriously ill. This horrifying event wasn't just a freak accident, it was a warning that melting Arctic soils could resurrect pathogens we thought were long eradicated. Scientists are now on high alert, fearing that as more ice melts, other forgotten diseases could emerge from their frozen tombs, posing new and unpredictable threats to human health. The Yamal tragedy underscores a terrifying reality. The Arctic's thawing isn't just about rising temperatures and disappearing ice, it's also about awakening ancient dangers that modern medicine might not be ready to handle. Next up, we are talking about the polluted Greenland sharks. Greenland sharks are some of the oldest creatures on Earth, and they are turning heads for all the wrong reasons as they unveil a dark secret hidden in the Arctic depths. These mysterious giants, living for centuries in the frigid remote waters, were once thought to be pristine guardians of the North, but recent studies have shocked scientists by revealing that their massive bodies are teeming with heavy metals and stubborn industrial chemicals like PCBs. These pollutants didn't originate in the Arctic. Instead, they traveled thousands of miles from bustling factories and sprawling cities, hitching rides on ocean currents and carried by the wind. As these toxins accumulate over the sharks' long lives, they pose serious threats, not only to the sharks themselves, but also to the entire marine ecosystem and the indigenous communities that rely on these waters for their livelihoods. The fact that such remote and ancient creatures are now contaminated highlights a terrifying reality. Human industrial pollution has reached even the most untouched corners of our planet. At our halfway mark today, we are talking about microplastics. Hidden deep within Greenland's ancient ice lies a shocking testament to humanity's relentless plastic footprint. Microplastics embedded in snow layers dating back decades, some even a century. When scientists drilled into these frozen time capsules, they uncovered tiny synthetic particles from everyday items like textiles, packaging, and consumer products, proving that plastic pollution isn't just a modern crisis, but has been seeping into the environment for much longer than we might have thought. These minuscule invaders traveled thousands of miles, reaching one of the most remote and pristine places on Earth. The discovery is unsettling because it shows just how pervasive our plastic waste has become, infiltrating ecosystems that were once considered untouched by humanity. Microplastics in Greenland's ice could disrupt delicate Arctic food webs, harm wildlife, and eventually make their way into the diets of those relying on these ecosystems. This revelation forces us to confront the grim reality that no corner of the planet is safe from plastic pollution. As the Arctic continues to thaw, these frozen records are not just indicators of past pollution, but ominous warnings of a future where plastic could dominate even the most remote landscapes. Beneath Greenland's vast ice sheet lies a hidden relic of the Cold War, a chilling reminder that history's shadows can resurface in the most unexpected ways. Camp Century, one of several US military bases buried beneath thick layers of ice, was once a bustling hub of scientific research and secretive operations. Today, as global temperatures climb and the ice melts faster than anyone predicted, the remnants planets of these frozen outposts are thawing, unleashing a toxic legacy that scientists are scrambling to understand. Inside these abandoned bases, diesel fuel leaks from old generators, PCBs from electrical equipment seep into the ground, and low-level radioactive waste from experiments begins to percolate into the pristine Arctic environment. The fear is palpable. These pollutants could contaminate rivers and soil, poisoning wildlife. Imagine decades-old chemicals and radioactive materials once securely locked away, now mingling with melting ice and flowing into untouched ecosystems. The thawing of Camp Century and its toxic cargo serves as a warning that the repercussions of past conflicts can linger for centuries. Next, we are talking about the Atlanticization of the Arctic Ocean. Warm, salty Atlantic waters are invading the Arctic Ocean, sparking a silent invasion that's turning heads and raising alarms among scientists. This phenomenon, dubbed Atlanticization, is fundamentally altering the Arctic's once pristine marine ecosystem. As these warmer currents seep north, they bring with them species that have never before ventured into these icy waters. Imagine Atlantic cod swimming where only Arctic char once ruled, or invasive jellyfish drifting into regions teeming with native plankton. These newcomers disrupt established food webs, outcompeting and displacing native species that are crucial to the Arctic's very delicate balance. The shift in ocean chemistry also opens the door for new pathogens to hitch a ride. The influx of nutrient-rich waters is changing the very foundation of the marine environment, leading to unpredictable blooms of algae and altering the availability of essential nutrients. This rapid transformation not only threatens biodiversity, but also jeopardizes the stability of the entire region's climate system. Scientists fear that Atlanticization could accelerate the loss of Arctic ice, further intensifying global warming and creating a feedback loop that exacerbates environmental change. Next, we are talking about ancient fungal spores. The frozen ground in the Arctic is thawing, and it's not just melting ice that's being uncovered. We are talking about ancient fungal spores, some tens of thousands of years old, that are waking up from their icy slumber. These aren't your average mushrooms. Some of these prehistoric fungi have the potential to infect plants and maybe even animals. Scientists are worried because these re-emerging fungi could throw entire ecosystems out of whack. Imagine a forest where the soil chemistry suddenly changes, making it impossible for trees to survive. Or picture a tundra where familiar plants are wiped out by these ancient invaders. It's a real-life ecological thriller unfolding before our eyes, and the consequences could be dire. And finally on our list today, we are talking about the forever chemicals in the Arctic wildlife. Polar bears. Those majestic rulers of the Arctic are carrying a disturbing secret within their bodies: forever chemicals. These pollutants, officially known as PFAs, have been found in alarmingly high levels in Arctic wildlife like polar bears, seals, and seabirds. The crazy thing is, these chemicals are mainly released thousands of miles away from the Arctic through industrial activities in more populated areas. But like tiny hitchhikers, they travel on ocean currents and wind, eventually reaching the most remote corners of the planet. And here's the kicker: these chemicals don't break down in the environment. They linger, earning their nickname forever chemicals, and accumulate in the bodies of animals at the top of the food chain. This means these iconic Arctic creatures are facing a hidden threat that weakens their immune systems, messes with their ability to reproduce, and causes a whole host of other health problems.
Starting us off at number 10, we have sea pigs. If you think these things look anything like actual land pigs, you are sorely mistaken. They are indeed pink, but other than that, they look like something from outer space. These undersea creatures are actually a species of sea cucumber. Their scientific names are scotoplanes, and they are found at the bottom of the sea floor in the colder regions on Earth. You will probably never actually come across a live one for that matter, but if you could, they would be able to fit in the palm of your hand, or about 4 to 6 inches in length. So I guess that makes them more like sea miniature pigs? Maybe? I don't know. These weird pink little creatures can often be found in groups all facing the exact same way, and they feed off scum that they find in the mud on the ocean floor, which include decaying plants and animals. So they truly do eat like pigs. At number 9, we have the skunk bear. Just kidding, that's just its nickname, which I didn't know at first. But these animals are actually wolverines. Have you ever wondered what these things actually are other than muscular X-Men human characters? Well, these creatures actually live in the Arctic and subarctic regions and are nowhere near as cute and cuddly as they look. Okay, well, they are cute, but let me tell you, these things are dangerous. They have been known to take on wolves and bears with their ferocious claws, which is why the X-Men superhero is named Wolverine. Anyway, there are no known Wolverine attacks on humans, but that's just as long as we leave them alone. And they are also known to travel up to about 15 miles per day. And with their razor-sharp claws, I'm sure no animal will stop it in its tracks. At number 8, we have permafrost. What is permafrost? Well, permafrost is basically frozen solid ground that stays frozen for over a period of 2 years. You can notice this kind of natural effect in areas of higher elevation where the temperature on average falls below freezing. The ground beneath your feet will stay frozen completely for years. Imagine a Canadian winter. If you're not from an area of the world where it snows, then just imagine a thick layer of pure ice on top of your property that never ever melts. That basically is what it would be like to live on permafrost. So for anyone that ever wanted to go or try ice skating, grab your stick and lace up. At number 7, we have my favorite one on the list. We have the Northern Lights, also known as the Aurora Borealis. You have probably heard of these before in movies or in science class, but in case you haven't, the Northern Lights are multicolored lights with blues, purples, greens, and whatever, and they move and they shine throughout the northern sky. This happens when particles with an electric charge are released from the sun into the northern atmosphere of Earth and are mixed with gases such as nitrogen and oxygen. I am lucky enough that I have been a witness to the Northern Lights a few times as I grew up a bit more north, but I've never actually been that far north to see them in their full glory. But it is on my bucket list to go as far north as I can to see these amazing lights because I truly do think they are one of the most magical natural events one can see. Weird, but breathtaking. At number 6, we have new islands. Back in 2013 near the fjords in the Arctic, a new island was discovered. This island was only recently discovered because it is actually split off from North Brook Island in Russia. With global warming affecting our colder regions more and more, the melting of the ice caps and larger ice land masses lead to more splits within the ice. Due to this, we see more and more ice structures appearing and disappearing all of the time. So we might continue to see new land masses in the polar areas of Earth, which sounds really cool, but let's hope we don't find any more. Let's keep that ice frozen, shall we? At number 5, coming in at our halfway point, we have bounties of oil. Most of the world's industries are constantly in search of oil, producing oil, buying oil, selling oil, all that fun, outdated stuff. But funny enough, in a study that was completed back in 2008, there's reportedly 20% of the world's undiscovered oil deposits up in the Arctic. No wonder Santa has been camping out up there for this long. His entire workshops run on the stuff. But seriously, it's 2021. How have we not exhausted this source yet either? Well, it's because with the ice melting from global warming and such unpredictable terrain, we don't think we are ready or have the ability just yet to retrieve that oil. If anything were to happen, it could be catastrophic. So for now, let's just leave the oil where it is and maybe work on a more green and lasting resource, huh? At number 4, we have the half year of darkness and half year of light. That's right, if you live up in the North Pole, then starting September 25th, you will experience a half year of darkness, and then another half year of light after that. How does this work? Well, the Earth is on a tilt of 23.5 degrees. The Earth then orbits around the Sun, and starting in late September and ending in the end of March, the North Pole is on such an angle that most of the sunlight doesn't actually hit it. That being said, it doesn't go immediately pitch black because the sun does reach the pole for a bit longer than September 25th, but eventually it does become dark as night. After March 22nd though, the exact opposite happens. So if you want to live up in the North Pole, maybe figure out if you're a nighthawk or an early bird first, and then decide which season is best suited for you. Oh, and say hi to Santa for me. Starting us off in our top 3, at number 3 is a frost virus. Yeah, guess what folks, there's another virus out there, and it's in the North Pole. Recently, scientists completing tests in the North Pole found a 30,000-year-old virus that stayed alive in the ice. Yikes. I know what you're thinking, we have had a rough year and a half already with this coronavirus crap, that we don't need any more of this stuff, and I agree with you, but luckily for us, this frost virus doesn't actually prey on humans. Scientists have called this the Malavirus, or sometimes even known as Behemoth. Why? I don't know, and maybe I don't want to. But scientists have also discovered more viruses up there, but it hasn't been reported exactly how many. For now, I got other things to worry about though, so as long as I know this Malavirus doesn't prey on us humans, I'm okay. It actually only preys on amoebas, so they won't ravage our planet anytime soon. We think. At number 2, we have ancient mummies. Back in 2017 in Siberia, scientists discovered something quite surprising deep within the ice, or should I say, someone. In the frozen depths, Siberian scientists uniced what is believed to be a 900-year-old Russian woman mummy. She was found within the permafrost just within the Arctic Circle. It is believed that she is from a medieval civilization and was the first woman to be discovered at the site in a long ago society that was made up of mostly men. What then happened was scientists also uniced a mummy baby not too far away from the woman. As sad as that may sound, these findings brought huge joy to the scientists because it brought us the possibility to learn more about this medieval Arctic civilization. That's really cool and all, but really, I just want them to unearth some elf mummies. I want to know how long you've been up there, Santa. Huh? And finally, coming in at number 1 and my second favorite on the list, it is just so wickedly mysterious. We have unexplained holes. Back in April of 2018, researchers and pilots flying overhead discovered these large crater-like looking holes. According to National Geographic, scientists still have no freaking clue on what is making these holes. However, there is a color change in the ice right around the perimeter of each hole, which leads scientists to believe that these holes are the result of a temperature change and that the ice is melting. Okay, you know what? As of right now, I guess scientists do have one hypothesis on why these holes are appearing. They believe that it might be due to the fast melting polar ice caps and that these are just small little areas that warm up and give way, but I don't know, that doesn't really make sense to me because it seems to me that these holes are melting on the surface, not underneath. So maybe it's from a landing vehicle, maybe not human tech, maybe it's the aliens, I don't know, or maybe I just think way too much about aliens these days and you know that's probably more like it. But anyway, there you go. Unexplained holes.